One of the things that I'm noticing is that when I'm talking to people about their kids right now, the big crisis point with boys, particularly, seems to not be when they're 4 and 5 and not when they're in high school. It's that failure to launch afterward. And as we're talking with a bunch of people, very highly accomplished, successful families, and all of them talking about sons who are not just still there in the house, but don't have any real trajectory out into the world and are living in a world of gaming and substances often. Why is that the case? Why is that turning out to be so often the story for young men? And what can these neighborhoods that are starting to get back to health do about it?
We should ask ourselves, how have our boys and our children been socialized over the years to getting to where they are at this point? I think you're talking about people who are probably 23, 24, 25, could be a little older. I mean, it could be younger as well, about going to college. And the key thing is, think about how we are socializing our next generation. If they're spending their time with technology and not with people, and we're protecting them. And Jonathan Haidt will talk about some of this. I will go further and talk about the importance of place-based community and the place-based institutions. The more the boys are in these institutions with other people, I like to talk about being embedded and embodied. If you're embedded in institutions and you're having embodied relationships, and that is happening when you're 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, you're experiencing life as people should be experiencing life, as life has always been experienced. You're with others, you're taking risks, you're in relationships, you're learning. If instead you're on your phone or on a computer and you're gaming or you're meeting people digitally, and you're not having that type of relationship with institutions and activities, I mean, clearly when you get to 23, you're probably going to feel a little bit anxious, maybe even very anxious about doing things. You're not going to have grown up having a lot of experience taking risks with people. That's why you hear this data that nobody wants to date and go around with people of the other sex. I mean, I remember my childhood, and those days it was the opposite. I mean, it was, if anything, we were a bit out of control. Yeah. And today we're the opposite. We're just afraid. And so it's not only free play, which is what he talks about. I would go further. You need to live in a place where you trust your neighbors. You need to live in a place with an abundance of institutions. You need to live in a place in which those kids, boys in particular, but girls as well. You mentioned Instagram. The girls are very affected by Instagram. The boys are not able to launch because they're just removed into their digital play. The more people are out there, the kids are out there and they're with each other and they're playing with each other and they're doing things with each other, and there might be volunteering, it might be some work, it might be doing things in some institution. And that is occurring day in, day out, or at least weekly, a few times a week, and it's happening all the way up. And then you talk about that pathway to a job, to marriage. You've already learned this habit about being attached to other people, being attached to institutions, being attached to responsibility, and you're ready to take it on because you've incrementally had more and more and more. That's how people grow up. If instead that we've protected them, or by default just let them go on their technology, and there are no local institutions, which is the case in many places, and we don't trust our neighbors, so we're not going to let them out of the house, and all these things, I mean, it could be on one day, it makes sense, but imagine every day for years, this whole environment, some of it's overprotection, some of it is the technology, some of it is the thinning of relationships and the thinning of the institutions. The end result is it should be natural. If these kids are not prepared to be adults and act like adults, if anything, they're being prepared to hide from everything because we've basically let them spend 10 years from, let's say, from 12 to 22, whatever the years are, where they basically have been hiding from social interaction. So what would you expect? If our whole society is being deinstitutionalized, we're not going to get to 22 and 23 and ask people to attach to institutions, marriage, church, a job, because they have no experience. So that's where the loss of community for me has such huge cascading effects that we can't even begin to map out unless you really think it through very clearly.